Good evening. Today is Thursday, June 24th, 2021. We're here with the A Course in Miracles Palm Beach Study Group. Let's please have a moment of silence. Thank you and welcome. We are on page 39, chapter 4, section 2, paragraph 10. And we're picking up where we left off. Yes,
It's 59.
59. What did I say?
39. Unless I heard you wrong.
I can't, the number's too small. I can't see it really, but okay. Page 59. Thank you, and we're picking up from where we left off last week. So last week in this section, which is the ego and false autonomy, we went through paragraphs 1 through 9. So we're starting on paragraph 10. Salvation is nothing more than right-mindedness, which is not the one-mindedness of Holy Spirit, but which must be achieved before one-mindedness is restored. Right-mindedness leads to the next step automatically, because right perception is uniformly without attack, and therefore wrong-mindedness is obliterated. The ego cannot survive without judgment and is laid aside accordingly. The mind then has only one direction in which it can move. Its direction is also always automatic because it cannot be dictated by the thought system to which it adheres. So we've kind of discussed this in the past with, being on the journey of moving from ego to spirit. So our most immediate goal is to be as right-minded as possible, which means as spirit-minded as possible. And once we have completed that journey, we'll automatically go into one-mindedness, which in here is referred to salvation. It's also the atonement. It's also enlightenment. There's different words. So right-mindedness has to be achieved before one-mindedness can be restored. And that's a key word, restored. It's not something new. We were created in one-mindedness. We separated ourselves from one-mindedness. So the journey is to restore one-mindedness. And right-mindedness leads to the next step automatically. And the ego cannot survive without judgment. So a very key lesson to learn is to stop judging. Just accept everything as is within the oneness. It's neither good nor bad. It just is. And what it is spirit, whole and innocent and free. And when we have that in our mind, and we stop all the little judgments we make every day, criticizing people, reacting to their physical picture that they present or the words that they say or what have you, and not having any reaction to that. There's somewhere in the course where it says the best reaction is to remain neutral. And it's also been pointed out that if you really understand the life of Jesus, he exhibited that. He exhibited neutrality. People accused him of stuff and stuff. That didn't faze him. Or praise didn't faze him either. So remember, the mind has only one direction in which it can move. So hopefully we're moving our minds into right-mindedness, which will lead us to one-mindedness. And ego will just fall away. We don't have to fight ego. Ego will just fall away. Again, you turn on the light, the darkness disappears. It's only dark because there's no light. You turn on the light, you can't have darkness and light at the same time. It doesn't work. So, any questions? Yes, David. You got to unmute, David. All right, you shut off your video. You hit the wrong button.
Yeah, we did it.
There you go.
As you were speaking about that section, I was thinking back at one time you said that we're born innocent. And so we're in spirit, and we die, we're in spirit again. So it's almost like ego's everything in between birth and death. And is it, I'm trying to tie it into something else you said. Well, I guess life is the balance in between life and death. It's the ego and the innocence or the oneness. And we work towards being innocent again, or in spirit.
Right. We work to regain our innocence, or we never really lost our innocence from spirit's point of view. What we lost is our understanding that we were created innocent in the first place, and we still are. So we need to regain our awareness of our innocence. From Spirit's point of view, we never lost our innocence, but we did lose our awareness of our innocence when we fell into ego, when we created the ego. So we need to regain our awareness of it, and that happens in our mind. Okay, then on to paragraph 11. It cannot be emphasized too often that correcting perception is merely a temporary expedient. It is necessary only because misperception is a block to knowledge, while accurate perception is a stepping stone toward it. The whole value of light, of right perception, lies in the inevitable realization that all perception is unnecessary. This removes the block entirely. You may ask how this is possible as long as you appear to be living in this world. That is a reasonable question. You must be careful, however, that you really understand it. Who is the you who are living in this world? Spirit is immortal, and immortality is a constant state. It is as true now as it ever was or ever will be, because it implies no change at all. It is not a continuum, nor is it understood by being compared to an opposite. Knowledge never involves comparison. That is the main difference from everything else the mind can grasp. Questions, comments? Well, this is a very important paragraph because it points out many understandings about ego and spirit. So, correcting perception. We've already been told that perception is of ego, knowledge is of spirit. Correcting perception is a temporary expedient. It helps us along when we can correct our perception of things while in the ego world. It's necessary because misperception is a block to knowledge. So ego thinking is a block to spiritual understanding. While accurate perception, in other words, learning what Spirit's point of view is, learning about the knowledge that Spirit teaches us, is a stepping stone. So that's accurate perception, or correcting perception is working through changing the ego perception to spiritual understanding. So it's a stepping stone. And the whole value of right perception lies in the inevitable realization that all perception is unnecessary. All perception is of ego, and here we're hearing the word, it's unnecessary. We don't need that for our survival. We are already immortal beings. What do we need ego's wrong or misperception for? That's not helping us. So all perception, all ego thinking, it's unnecessary. We don't need it. And this removes the block entirely. When we become fully aware of that, and we're acting and living from that point of view, then the block is removed entirely. You may ask, how is this possible as long as you appear to be living in this world? You appear to be living in the ego world, and that's a reasonable question. But you must be careful that you really understand it. Who is the you who are living in this world? So the you that's living in this world is the ego you. It's not the spiritual you. Your high self, your true self, your self with a capital S, is not really living in this world. Your small s self, your ego self, is living in this world. You see? So, who is the you who are living in this world? Spirit is immortal, and immortality is a constant state. It is as true now as it ever was or ever will be, because it implies no change at all. And that's characteristic of the spirit world. It's not a continuum. The spirit world is not a continuum, nor is it understood by being compared to an opposite. There are no opposites in spirit world. Everything is one. It's not a duality. Ego is a duality. Ego is a right and a left, an up and a down, a here and a there, an us and a them, a right and a wrong. That's not the case of the spiritual reality. Spiritual reality is oneness. There's no duality. So knowledge never involves comparison. Perception involves comparison. You're good or you're bad, those are perceptions. But knowledge, you are completely innocent, always have been, always will be. That's spiritual thinking. There's no comparisons there. And that is the main difference from everything else the mind can grasp. So that's what we need to learn, and that's the way we need to be thinking in order to work through correct perception into the oneness, the perception of oneness. So correct perception is understanding how spirit thinks and knows. Yes, Dave.
Sometimes people make an observation of me and when I'm in spirit, but then that throws me into ego. The spirit goes away, that temporary spirit. What do you do in these cases?
Get back, get back, get back to where you once belonged. You just, change your mind again. That's it. In the ego world, we're flip-flopping back and forth on this journey as we're making this journey towards enlightenment, and that's normal in this world. It will flip-flop. So you find yourself in ego, you stop, you take a deep breath, you remind yourself, oh, that's not spirit thinking, and you readjust, get back on the path. If when you're a kid and you're learning to ride your bicycle and you're gonna fall down, well, what do? You get up, you get back on the bike, and you start riding again. That's what you do.
Actually, well, I think you got the opposite of what I said.
Uh-oh.
I was in spirit, or I was doing something in spirit and I didn't even realize that somebody recognized that. And then when they recognized it and verbalized it to me, it went away. I was in ego.
Well, I don't really know. Maybe you can give us an example, because I thought I answered your question.
Maybe you did, but maybe I'm not a good listener. They see me doing something kind or saying something kind
Yeah.
about somebody, and I'm in spirit. I'm using spirit language,
right.
and recognize it. And what happens for me is I go back into ego. I guess I'm trying to have humility, and I'm at a loss for words.
Well, try this. If this is, see if this addresses what you're trying to say. So you're being kind to someone, and someone recognizes the kindness and comments upon it, and you're saying that kind of throws you off kilter. And how do you respond? And it's very easy. You just say thank you. You acknowledge their kindness. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
So then we're both in spirit.
And then you're both in spirit. There you go.
Hey, thanks, John.
You're welcome. Well, thank you, David.
It's very kind of you to say
Well, thank you, David.
that.
Anyone else care to comment before we go on to the next chapter? Yes, Helene.
Thank you, David. Thank you, John. Just a quick question. And not even really a question so much as just an observation. It really does seem as if when you're talking about thinking about the person who is witnessing this or who is envisioning this, I mean, comparative religions, right? So meditation, Buddhism, any of those schools will say, you know, sit in the seat of the witness, right? Which is really kind of what this is talking about, isn't it? I mean, the idea of observing the people who are moving in, you know, a regular everyday fashion and appreciating the fact that spirit is witnessing it, and you are that spirit, you are that witness. So sitting in the seat of the witness or being the witness really brings you out of ego pretty quickly.
Only if you're not judging.
Yeah.
If you're
Yeah, no,
sitting,
I mean,
if you're
ahead, I'm
non-judgmental in it, yes. Does that make sense?
yeah, no, that's exactly what I mean.
Oh,
Like
okay.
in meditation, when you're in meditation, you remove yourself from the thoughts that are occurring and try to envision, at least this is one school of thought, you try to envision the witness, the person who is witnessing you sitting there on your cushion and
Right.
saying your words and Yeah.
Your higher self, yourself with a capital S, is the witness, is what you're saying. Yes.
right, which is what you said. Yeah. It's just, it constantly amazes me how much what we're reading has to do with teachings from other schools of spiritual understanding.
Oh, yeah. These teachings are nothing new. I mean, they've been being taught for thousands and thousands of years by various traditions. What's new about this is that it's the language, the scope, the very comprehensiveness of it. Many of the other traditions in the past taught a part of it, and someone else taught a part of it, and someone else taught a part. But this is all encompassing. The Course is all encompassing. It's looking at it from every different angle. And people say, oh, it's so repetitive. Well, yeah, it is on purpose. It's showing it from every angle so that everybody, no matter what tradition they're coming from, can hopefully find the truth that it's teaching. Eileen, did you want to make a comment?
You know, it's one of those things where if you're quiet long enough, somebody says what you were gonna.
Oh, okay.
So what I was gonna, one of the things, one thought that I had, and it's a reference to last night. So I know David wasn't there, but I immediately, when I was listening to what you said, I thought immediately of the question you posed last night. And I have it written down. How do you find joy in a joyless place? except to realize that you're not there. And this feels like that, this idea of the same. It's just like I see a connective thread with the idea that that you recognize that all perception is not necessary. That in fact, when you're not in ego, perception doesn't even have a place. And it's the same kind of thing. It felt to me like the same thing as recognizing you're not there, because you're not there is you're not in ego world. And this is the same thing, talking about not being in ego world, and how when you're not in ego world, perception doesn't even have application. And then I was also thinking when Helene was talking about, and you can, Helene, let me know if this matches what you were presenting. I was thinking that it made me think about the idea of an awareness that actually here on this ego planet, that the difference between, being in the ego world and functioning from a place of awareness that in fact you're a vessel for spirit to interact in whatever the goings on of the planet is, which is actually, it's actually happening. I understand it's theoretically an illusion. I mean, it's hard to even use words with this, but we are here. We are here. And so it's the difference between being kind of here blindly, or being here understanding that actually spirit, that this is a vessel for spirit, and then thinking that spirit is watching through this vessel. Is that what you were saying, Helene?
No, not necessarily. I don't think. I mean, just from what I'm hearing, and I might not be fully understanding, but I guess my thought is, like, as much as you refer to us being here in the spirit realm, we're here. I mean, I think that's the teaching of the book. I really need to defer to John. He's the expert on this, I guess. So I'll just defer to whatever he explains. Thank you, John.
Okay, so we're spiritual beings. We're living in the ego world by our own choice, because we created it. And we're working ourselves back into our spiritual selves, our spiritual understanding, because that's what we do. And the way that we do that is through our interactions with everyone and everything while we're in the ego world. Because how we perceive in the ego world is going to determine how we get back to where we once belonged, which we never really left, but we're not cognizant of that while we're in the ego world. So by acting in love, acting in kindness and compassion and forgiveness towards our fellow human beings, whoever they are, by not judging people or situations, by being kind to animals and people and whoever, that alters our perception, that corrects our perception, because ego always wants to attack. Ego always wants to fight. Ego always wants to defend itself. Ego wants to judge people as worthy and unworthy of our attention. And again, we just have to look to the life of Jesus. They attacked him. He didn't respond. He told his disciples, no, put the sword down. You don't have to fight here. The lepers came up to him. He accepted them and he healed them. The woman, he said, hey, don't, you who are without sin cast the first stone. What are you judging her for? You've all sinned just as much as what you're accusing her of doing. He exhibited these qualities of being non-judgmental, of being kind and compassionate and loving. And so that's the road to spirituality, is correcting your perception from one of hate, distrust, jealousy, judgment, to one of loving, kindness, compassion, forgiveness.
Is there, so correct me if I am wrong here, does it not include this idea that when you set ego aside and you open to spirit, that you actually become a channel for spirit? Is that not how that works?
You are already a channel for spirit if you allow yourself to be.
Okay. So that's what
You
yes, so I
have
guess
free
that,
will. We are spiritual beings, so we are inherently channels for spirit. The problem is that a lot of people don't recognize themselves as spiritual beings. They don't think of themselves as spiritual beings. They think of themselves as human beings, that they were born and they're going to die, and they have to fight for what they want. They have to earn as much money as they can. They have to, this and that, their relationships with people, they're selfish, they're judgmental. So they're not understanding that they really are spiritual beings, even though they are. And that's what we're trying to teach them, that, hey, you don't have to think of yourself like that. You can think of yourself in much higher terms.
okay.
I think, John, I know David wants to talk, and David, if you'll just allow me, please, one quick moment.
Go ahead, Helene.
Thank you. So I still think there's a little bit of a distinction to be drawn that we're not expressly stating, and that is the difference between ego being a vessel for spirit and we are spirit, period. There may be an ego existing, but we are the witness that is viewing that. You know what I mean? Like it seems as if we're kind of dancing around that ultimate question, which is, are we ego being a vessel for spirit? And if we accept spirit and let spirit come into us and live through us, we'll have this, by forgiving, we'll have this eternal life. Or are we guaranteed that because we are spirit and there isn't a need for us to somehow, form that ego into something that accepts spirit? It's more a matter of rejecting ego, rejecting what we know to be ego.
Ego is not the vessel for spirit. Ego.
Okay.
No, it all happens in the mind, not the body. The mind is separate from the mind is not your brain. Brain is body. Mind is not. Mind is eternal. The ego exists as a thought in the mind, but it's an unreal thought. Ego is not a vessel. Ego is a thought construct. When we stop thinking with ego, It just no longer exists. Spirit is the creator of mind. So when we had the thought that we could separate ourselves from our Father, that was a thought. And that thought form expressed itself as the ego. When we stop thinking that, the ego just disappears because it was just a thought form in the first place. It has no physical reality. It has no reality whatsoever.
Thank you, John. I don't think I've heard it put that way before. And I'm sure you've said it, I just haven't heard it accurately. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, David, it's your turn. You've been patiently waiting.
It was hard for me to listen when I had these thoughts in my mind, but I apologize for that. But what came to me, almost like a visual that, let's see if I can recall, when my heart opens to everything, it becomes the oneness, the container. There is really no container, or maybe there is, I just haven't pictured it yet. But I guess my container, I wrote a little bit about this once, but my container is my heart. And as I approach the oneness, my heart opens up to all.
That's nice. Yeah.
Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, sure.
And as I do things like you were mentioning before, like I exhibit loving kindness, compassion, empathy, my container grows and brings more people into my heart and opens my heart even more. It's through the practice of oneness or oneness consciousness or being in the God zone. I know there's many ways I've expressed it. It brings me to love myself and others as one. And it's a beautiful feeling when it happens.
Yes.
Not that I flip out of it once in a while.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. All right. Eileen, did you want to say anything more?
I think we're good on this.
Okay. Thank you.
Actually, just one thing, because I just feel like this is going on too long, but I just want to say this one thing, because I'm just getting a little bit tripped up on the fact that, at least in my mind, I'm walking around on this planet and I'm interacting with other humans and animals and how, the visual and the experiential of this planet, which is not intangible. Okay. So, but I think of, spirit as maybe you can't, like it's not solid, like it's not like I can't touch it, like I can touch this table. It's an energy or something. So I guess that's where I look at, what is this body doing? And it's almost, it makes me wonder about if, let's say I really did achieve the elimination of ego, would I just dissolve and blend into the inanimate texture of spirit? Or is this body supposed to deliver spirit through its ability to interact with other beings? One little question.
So Our true selves are intangible. Our true selves are not physical. So when people die, their body dies, but their consciousness continues. Right? So think of yourself as being a consciousness, a spiritual consciousness. It is not corporeal. Your body is an ego construct that houses your consciousness while living in this illusion. But once you reach a state of enlightenment, of nirvana, of the atonement, you don't need the body construct anymore. You don't need the ego world anymore. It's just gone. And believe me, you won't miss it.
No, it sounds way better, actually. I'm just trying to, like I said, I was just trying to construct.
Right.
But
It's difficult to the most difficult thing for people when studying the course is this whole thing about that the physical world is just an illusion and it doesn't really exist. It's just a dream. People have such a hard time with that because the ego is so invested in the physical. And so it's very difficult for people to wrap their heads around it. But if you're open to the idea and you consider it and contemplate it, and the more you learn about the course, the easier it becomes to just, accept that as reality. We're not physical beings, and from spirit's point of view, we're consciousness. We're mental entities. Helene.
I was just going to chime in with the thought, this obviously is a difficult concept, and I struggle with it all the time. And many times during our previous meetings, I've heard people say, but what do you mean this isn't real? I'm looking at my computer printer. I'm looking at my computer screen. It's real. These are all things that I can see and touch. And I've heard in the past, we all pretty much know Maya. And I've heard her in the past, like, take an object and, she strikes it with something. And she's like, so here's my pen. My pen is striking this, phone. And science will tell us that there are molecules flying all over the place the moment I do that. This is perceived as a solid, but it is composed of molecules. And when those molecules are disturbed, I don't see, because my eyes are not tuned rather to, that depth of perception. But, and you've said this too, John, I think I've heard you say the same thing. It kind of points to the fact that as much as our mind wants to say, this is a solid thing that I can hold, it's all a dream. It's all exactly what our egos are perceiving. So to the extent we still struggle with that, yeah, it's difficult to say, no, I'm not, this physical appearance is not merely a vessel for spirit. Spirit is beyond all of it. Spirit is underlying all of it. Just a thought.
Yes, thank you. So one of the biggest problems we have is language. And the physical world is real. People say, but it's real. I can feel it. I can touch it. But that real is a small r. Physical and spiritual reality is the only reality. That real is a capital R. So the problem is that we're using the same word. If and so people are confused and they have a hard time understanding and making that transition. But just like there's the ego self with the small s and the spiritual self with the capital S, there's the ego reality with the small r, and there's the spiritual reality with the capital R. So that's one way of trying to differentiate. And if we just made up different words, if we said, well, the ego world is real, and the spiritual world is como se llama, it's just another word for. And they weren't the same word. It wouldn't be so difficult to sort it out. But if we understand that a lot of these, ego knowledge, oh, this is knowledge, 2 + 2 = 3. Yeah, but that's ego knowledge. That's 2 + 2 = 3. Is that what I said? That's knowledge with a small k, We are immortal beings. That's spiritual knowledge with a capital K. So.
Yeah, can I just say one quick thing, because I just want to differentiate. I actually am not having trouble with the ideas that are being delivered here about small r real and capital R real. What I wanted to be asking about, and maybe it didn't come across clear, is how do we navigate the navigation aspect of the, I don't know if transcendence is the right word, but the interrelation or the process of being while you're skirting both, or whatever, there's capital R real, and then there's little r real. And in little r real, it seems like I have a body. And in little r real, it seems like there's a table here, And in capital R real, it just isn't, or whatever it is. But I guess what I'm connected to being interested in is, what do I do? What do I do? How do I do it? How do I navigate the process within the context of that truth is really what I've been wanting to pose questions about. When I say things like, so if I successfully manage to eliminate ego world thinking, will I disappear? Will I blend? Will I blend? Will I go into a different? Will I go into a different? Will I? Do you know what I'm saying? And while I haven't done that, do I just do the best I can to act the way you're talking about? That brings me much more connected to spirit thinking versus ego thinking. So really, I was just looking for the mechanics, but I do grasp the concept. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll try to address that the best that I can. But one thing you have to realize is that I myself am still in an ego body. So, and I recognize that, and I'm trying to work with that. First of all, the mechanics of it is that it's all thought. It all happens in the mind. I just said that a bit ago. It's how you think about things. And so that's the one thing. The other thing is that you don't even have to think about what's going to happen to the body, because that will disappear. When ego disappears, there's nothing left but spirit. And when you're at that point, then you'll know. You really can't know until you get there. It's like, all right, I saw pictures of the geyser at Yellowstone Park. You know, I've seen videos of it. I've seen everything, and I've read books about it. I didn't, but until I actually go there and experience it, I'm not going to have the full understanding of it. You know, and no matter what place it is, a city, a place, or whatever, you know. And that's kind of, you know, the way it is. We're talking about it. We're trying to think about it. We're trying to formulate an idea of it, what have you. But until we actually get there, we're not going to really know. And so we can just surmise as best as possible. And the other side of that coin is, why even think about it? If we're accepting the fact that the physical reality is just a dream and it's not real in the first place, what difference does it make what happens to it after we've transcended? It's, you know, so it's not there anymore. So what? It was never really there in the first place. So who's going to miss it? I think David wants to say something, or are you just playing with your device?
What I'm trying to do, I'm running out of power. I gotta find to plug it in, but that's not what I wanted to say is I had an experience, and I'm going to describe it, and you may not understand it. I'll try to describe it. There's when I was on vacation last couple of weeks, I saw a person who I've never been that fond of, but I tolerated her because her roommate I liked a lot and I've had a long history with. And I was left alone with this woman. And consciously I said to myself, I'm going to change my energy with her and see what happens. Well, I did. And, you know, I was present for her. And I started sending thoughts of love. I was trying to change my energy. And I asked her some questions. And all of a sudden I had this feeling. I think it was a feeling of love. I was kind of lost in the energy of I was in a space, and the word that came up was the wrong word when I tried to describe it, but it was like prickly is not it. It was the opposite. It was kind of a. I'm not even sure it was her that was having these feelings about it. It was a space. I can give it a bunch of words. There's no way to describe it. And I felt very loving towards her, even though I didn't like her personality. I started feeling compassion. I was thinking about, I think at the time, the hard life she had, but even though she had a hard life, she was there for her friends. And I felt I felt a connection for the first time with her. I used to try to get away from her, but I was trapped to be alone with her. And you know, and I had this experience twice. And once it was somebody else, and I can't even remember who they were, but I knew I had the experience. And I wonder if this is the type of feeling that we're seeking. This true oneness, not just in words, but in it was more than a feeling. It was an experience.
In answer to your question, I'll say yes.
but it was very brief. And actually, I came out of it feeling more loving than I felt before going into it.
Good.
And I never heard of anything like this before, and I don't know if you can name it. But
We'll call it, we'll call it the Gelman syndrome. You want to say something, Helene?
I think Boston sang about that, More Than a Feeling.
Oh, there you go. She's got a song. Well, that's a more than a feeling. Yes, David, very good.
I would like it to happen again. But
I'm sure it will, because you're one of those people who are actively pursuing this. You're not just studying the course. You're actively pursuing putting the course into practice. And that's just absolutely wonderful. And I'm sure that you'll have this feeling many more times as you continue. So God bless you.
as you said before, thank you, John.
Thank you.
I also, while you were talking, I started to get filled with spirit. I felt prickly. That's not the right word, but I had
Tingly?
that
How about tingly?
tingly. Yeah,
There you
I
go.
felt like energy coming out of my arms and my legs. So I'm going to go plug this in, and maybe I'll be able to stay with you.
Well, you know what? It's time anyway. We're at 7:57, so we're going to end for this evening. And tomorrow, no, tomorrow. Next week we'll start on section 3, love without conflict. So I hope that you'll join us again next week. And if we could just end with a moment of silence, please.